All right, so in this video, we're going to take another step towards trying to make it a more efficient process for factoring ax squared plus bx plus c. So far, we've been relying heavily on guess and check. And in the last video, we said, well, maybe if we can develop some number sense quickly, our guesses can get better. But that's a lot to ask. So let's see what we have. What we're going to do is we're going to take a look at a couple examples we've had already come across us. And we've looked at the expression we start with and the factored expression, and we started to point some things out. Obviously, we're always going for equivalence, and we've figured out that, yes, if we checked this, we could get our 5x squared, our outers and our inners are going to work nicely to make this and our last. And we were really concentrating on the fact that our outer and our inner were our check, and those products should add to negative 18. But in one of the videos, we pointed out that the outer and the inner, along with the negative 2x and the plus 20x adding together to make the middle term, I also made a mention that their product, the negative 2x and the 20x, their product also happens to be the same product as these two outer terms multiplied together. And I just kind of said that may help us somewhere down the line. So let's imagine what this would have looked like in another example we saw before. We saw this one in guess and check, and it was a very long guess and check. We did not take advantage of the fact that this product of the first term and the last term, and right now I'm just stripping it out and just looking at the numbers, that product could have been helpful. We didn't know that at the time. What we instead did was we came up with a decent guess structure. We worked our way through knowing that we would guess and check at how to break up the 14q squared and the 6, and our gauge on whether we were right was our check of our outer product and our inner product. But the outer product and the inner product, we were only worrying about what they added to. Turns out the outer product and the inner product should multiply to negative 84. And we know from previous experience that knowing what things multiply to gives you fewer options than knowing what they add to. So we're going to take advantage of that. These two facts together are going to help us be a little bit quicker eventually. So this was ultimately the factored expression. And our outer and our inner product, they certainly did add together to make negative 25q. And when you see them alongside of the other terms that were in the original problem, these are 3 bits of equivalence. And today we're going to look at this expression here and to try to come up with a way that we could write this 3-term expression as a 4-term expression. And then we could use our 4-term factoring, because I'm going to go on the assumption that our 4-term factoring is a little bit easier and a little bit less tedious than our guessing and checking that we've been doing for trinomials. So let's see what that's going to look like. Here's an expression we would ask to factor, and if you want to guess and check, and you want to get better at guess and check, and you feel good about guess and check, and your number sense helps you, good. If not, you might like this. What we're going to do is we're going to first find that outer product. And again, we're not going to worry about the C's because our symmetry is going to take care of that, our structure will take care of that. Negative 96 is an important product. We have to find a factor pair of negative 96 that adds to positive 29. So it's very much like what we were doing when we didn't have a number in front of c squared. We're saying, hey, what 2 numbers multiply to this and add to this? Let's go with that as our basis. What we do with it's going to be a little bit different here. But we're still negative 96 is the product, 29 is the sum. So let's get to work on that. Well, the first thing I'm thinking is a negative number. They're going to have opposite signs. So if I write a 1 and a 96, I can think of positive 1, negative 96, or negative 1 and a positive 96. And when I add those opposite signs together, I'm going to be able to make 95s of some kind. Positives and negatives, I could just get creative with the signs. But that's certainly not a 29. So I found a factor pair of negative 96 that didn't work for me. My next factor pair of negative 96, 2s and 48s, I could make a 46 if they had opposite signs. That's not 29. Ooh, there's my 29. Okay. So what I want to do now is I want to think, what am I going to do with this 3 and this 32? It turns out the 3 and the 32 is the way to think of this 29. Now that sounds strange, but remember, one of these is a positive, one of these is a negative. So I think that what we have to do is we have to rewrite this positive 29c as a negative 3c and a positive 32c. Why in the world would we do that? Because 4-term factoring is less about guess and check and requires less concentration and less organization and things like that. 4-term factoring, and these 4 terms are equivalent to these 3 terms, and 4-term factoring is grouping, and you can look and you can say these first 2 terms, let's find a common factor. I see it, it's a 3 and a c. When I look at these next two terms, my common factor is an 8, so I took that out. And lo and behold, like we were hoping, the remaining factors, when I took out the 3 and the c from here, and the remaining factors when I took out the 8 from here, they match. 4c minus 1 matching is great because when we did grouping, we did 2 steps. First thing we did was we took out 2 terms at a time of GCF. And the next thing we did was we looked at this as a 2-term expression and took the 4c minus 1 out front. And then we went through term by term and said what was left. Well, 3c is left from the first term, positive 8 is left from the next term. So this 3-term expression at the beginning here, factors is that. And we didn't have to guess and check. So I don't think that one example is nearly enough. Let's see if we can get to work on this one. Pulling in from the previous video, I scan across looking for a common factor and I don't see one because sometimes we saw that that 16 might get smaller or might go away all together if we do GCF first, but there's nothing there. Okay, so we'll find our outer product, this time a positive 80, and we're looking for factor pairs of positive 80 that add to negative 42. And as I hear myself say that, I think they're going to have the same sign to multiply to a positive 80, and they better be negatives if they're going to add to a negative 42. Okay, so let's find our factor pairs. 1 and 80, they make an 81. 2 and 40, they make a 42. Winner. Okay, so what are we going to do with that? We are going to realize that these are the outer and the inner products that created this term. We're going to separate out this term out into its 2 pieces, the negative 40u and the negative 2u. And the order doesn't matter there. It's going to work either way. You'll find the factoring by grouping work either way. But as I just happened to write it this time, I look across these 2 terms. I see a 2 in common. Let's go bigger. I see a 4 in common. I actually see an 8 in common. These have an 8 and a u in common. So I'll factor out the 8 and the u from this and leave a 2u and a minus 5. And then when I look over here, there's not much I have to take out to match that 2u minus 5. But I do need to take something out because the signs are opposite of what we would like. So if I factor out a negative 1 from this, negative 2u, and if I take a negative 1 out of this, fantastic, we wanted that match, we have our factor. So that's another skill for you to try. It's optional. You might like it better than guessing and checking, and you might still need something else. So down the line, we're going to continue to give you more strategies on these things, and we'll just figure out which one works best for you. So really, every day this week, you're going to be getting more practice at trying to do factoring of ax² plus bx plus c. And you really should work the way you think you're going to work. And you should just get more efficient at the way you're going to work. Don't feel any pressure to do one or the other. Just play with them, find out what you like best. Thanks.